Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, a leftist podcast covering news, politics, media, whatever else happens to have caught our attention or, more likely, provoked our ire. That's right. You know those angry leftists you've heard about online? You found them, or three of them anyway. And so, as one does, we've decided to channel that anger at a world on fire into the most essential of products, a podcast. Before we dive into today's chaos, you should probably at least be able to put some names to the voices you'll be hearing for the next hour plus, and hopefully many more episodes to come. So I'll lead us off. My name is Alex Rashiotis. I have a background in history and political science, teaching, tutoring, and computer and tabletop gaming. I've always been irritated by the omnipresence of media bias and distortion, especially against the left and working people generally. And I talk about politics all the time, so why not record it? Aiden, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hello, I'm Aiden Galligan. I also have a background in poli-sci, as well as some experience in journalism and nonprofit work, as well as customer service, sweeping floors, etc., whatever. Less glamorous stuff and less relevant stuff. But for better or worse, a constant has been my interest and engagement with world politics. And over years of reading about capitalist and imperialist horrors across the globe, I've drifted further and further left, and it would seem that now I have reached the end point of radicalization, starting a podcast.
You've snapped back to reality, as one might say.
You could say. And who's that? Whose dulcet tones are we hearing now?
There goes gravity. It's me, Jason Rashiotis. If you haven't guessed it, I'm Alex's younger brother, if that wasn't obvious already. I, too, have a background to complete the triumvirate in political science and teaching the various humanities, economics, philosophy. That's what they call it. And I spent my college years in D.C. learning really just how fucked we all are and how fucked everything is. So, yeah, I thought, let's get the band together and save the world. I care deeply about fighting for people who've been oppressed for generations. And, of course, I'm talking about gamers. Gamers shall rise up. We will overcome. We will overcome the chip shortages and the online scalpers together. Join us on this podcast journey, folks. Thank you. You may clap now.
We have a fundamental conceit here, and that is that we will be able to break into the podcasting world about a decade late. But
except we were early adopters. We've always wanted to podcast.
Yeah, long-time listeners, first-time attempters.
My best go-to example of this is Fortnite. Alex, you and I were the first people when fucking the early gaming magazines that we got subscriptions to were like, hey, there's this zombie survival building game called Fortnite coming out. Might be good. It's made by, the people who make Unreal. And we were like, man, that looks fun. It was like 2011. I was like, man, I can't wait to do a zombie survival game. We were so hyped for original Fortnite. Yeah. God damn it. In any case, we like all true podcasters, we slacked. We took our time getting to it. So we were with you in spirit, but now we're with you in person, sort of. Still not in person. You've been listening all along. So the starting sort of bit that we have here is the idea of what are we reading? Specifically, what are we reading in the news? Because most of us aren't reading shit, but those that are reading are usually not reading past the headlines. Turns out more than half of Americans do not read past the headlines of news articles, or I suppose for that sake, the initial shouting of the man on TV. But that's a rather frightening prospect, because the article headlines that are used are not just sensationalist clickbait garbage, though there's plenty of that. They kind of distill propaganda into like the dumbest, most manipulative form. And the fewest words necessary.
Right, like they have to get your attention and also kind of twist the information as quickly and effectively as possible, because they also know that's probably all that you're reading. And so you kind of get to wondering, if most Americans are only reading the headline, how are they interpreting what they're seeing? Because there's some wild shit out there. And so what we thought we would do is we would go through some of these articles and not actually read them, because that would be cheating. That's not what Americans do. We just read the headlines and we understand information from them by guessing. Because that's apparently what most of us are already doing.
In solidarity with our fellow Americans.
It's interpolating and running with it.
So I've done a little more legwork than the average American, which is to say I've at least organized these into some sort of thematic categories. And why don't we start with the thing that's been on everyone's mind for a year and a half, which is COVID.
What? What is this?
So, first article is titled, "When a person dies from COVID, it's okay to tell the truth about who they were."
What? Where'd you find this?
This is an article on
Was this written by fucking...
yahoo.com/lifestyle.
Where?
On yahoo.com's lifestyle section of their news.
Yahoo! This is by, like, Der Stürmer.
Mm-hmm. It was pretty great. So I have not read these articles either, because I'm playing the game as well as running it, apparently. At least
okay, so here's what's the over-under on Herman Cain being mentioned in, like, the first paragraph?
I think it's up there. Yeah.
I think this is either about Herman Cain or about the recent death of, like, a Scooby-Doo villain, maybe.
Now, bear in mind that all of these articles are fewer than 2 weeks old. So this is not something I dredged from, like, 2016 about Herman Cain or whatever, or, you know, not
right. Okay.
What the fuck am I talking about? Like early.
wait, Herman Cain was the first to die from COVID 3 years before.
That's when I wanted him to die. No, this wasn't dredged from like early 2020 when he died or whatever. It's about basically everything that's been happening fairly recently. Like you should be able to.
Was a time traveler.
It's a crisis actor.
So okay, so I think what it really is just more lib bullshit about shaming people who get COVID and who haven't been vaccinated yet. And now it's saying not only should we shame them in life, maybe before they get sick, let's shit on their graves even harder now to feel better about how we're doing. That's my bet on what it's really about.
I think that's likely. There's a whole bunch of articles that are like, this is why your Republican chud uncle sucks. And it's not all of his harmful views, it's that he won't wear a mask at Denny's. And it's like, yeah, but we know that. Like this is not information. Like when someone dies of a contagious disease and they're like in horrible suffering and agony, there's a lot of people who want to go in there and then dump on that and want to feel like really good about it.
This is not a news article.
Yeah.
This is a permission article. This is an article giving a certain class of people permission to be cunts towards other human beings who genuinely need respect and help and healthcare, obviously.
Right. And like I'm not defending the chud uncle. Like, yeah, obviously if you're contributing to a pandemic that is killing people, that's not good, but like the amount of people that chud uncle killed is probably in the single digits, whereas we've got like international organizations that have failed billions of people in the world, and we're not writing articles like why Bill Gates' obsession with Kovacs is killing 80% of the world. You know, we're just not reading that.
It's also like a kind of bizarre statement to be acting upon, like a presumption that people are treating people who have died of COVID already as like saints, that you can't address their sins or something like that. Like I don't think I've seen any kind of presumption of sainthood just because someone died of COVID. In fact, I think most people are already treating, the hundreds of thousands of people who died of COVID as an inconvenience in their timeline. It's kind of a bizarre straw man to conjure up.
Right, because no one's making the actual argument that we should not talk about it. So it's an argument about no one, only to make people feel good.
Right, it's killing a straw man as if we're talking about every anti-vax Republican as if they're John McCain.
Right.
Like as if they're an untouchable maverick who was ethical to the end, which is also all bullshit. But like no one was saying that. No one was saying that for any of these people. Yeah.
John McCain prayer 5 times a day.
Or one half of the big homies.
It's not like fucking Ronald Reagan, like, we're all Republicans today. Like, no, like no one's doing that for these people. Like even the other COVID people are like, may as well die, pussy. You didn't survive because you're a bitch, because we're all Trumpers now.
So this is interesting because it's we're towards the tail end of 2021, and the right-wing sentiment, or at least the news top-tier sentiment, has radically changed over the last 6 months. Like Fox News is huge pro-mask. Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, all these guys are coming out pro-vaccine and pro-mask. It's like, what has happened?
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. But before we get off of the thing we were just discussing, I have one more article that basically confirms exactly what we were just guessing.
Oh, good.
And it's called, "As Virus Cases Rise, Another Contagion Spreads Among the Vaccinated. Anger."
All right, so this is just the orc argument. This is just the orc argument. These people cannot be reasoned with. They're just emotional, ravenous savages.
As you might guess, this is a New York Times article.
How do I get paid for this?
Yeah.
I want to do this for a living. I want to write these headlines.
It's not that hard. It's easier to write, birthday letters for Hallmark.
Yeah, it's really incredible how we have weaponized an incredibly horrific event that's destroying the world as like another reason to hate your fucking shitty coworker. Guess who's shitty around the water cooler? That bitch. Yeah, that's right. He doesn't even wear. It's like the sassiest, dumbest shit. I don't even know. Like, it's almost like they're still doing the like. Have you no decency, sir? It's like clearly not. They voted for Trump twice. Like they don't believe in vaccines. What is this for?
Here's why this segment is so useful. Because I misread this title. I misread it as "Contagion Spreads Amongst the Unvaccinated." So this is another permission article.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's literally another. It's an even more.
You're allowed to be righteously indignantly angry as a vaccinated person.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god!
Well,
it's just I couldn't wipe out loud.
I think it's either that or it's like a rare conservative being brought on to say, "Don't forget to be polite while we're doing a horrible thing." So
right, it's the pushback.
Yeah, that conservatives always give like, don't be angry and yell at us while we're stripping away your voting rights.
So it's like a George Will article, or it's like, the liberals may have a few points about medicine and science working, but better not be rude about
exactly.
it. Yeah. Well, that could also. That's actually entirely possible. Also, it's just really incredible how once again, culture war bullshit is the only way to interpret.
Yeah, it's the only way that they know how to write and compute things.
Yeah, it's real bad. And this one verges into my next section called "Insane Republican Shit."
Sorry, that headline made me need to take a shit.
This is going to be a long segment. I expect.
It actually isn't, because I felt that would be too easy.
Yeah, sure.
So this one is the first of the Insane Republican ones, but it's still kind of in COVID. So remember when all those Dems fled from Texas to avoid allowing them to destroy the voting rights there?
Yeah.
Well, an article was written called "Runaway Dems Call for Texas Mask Mandate Despite Wearing None on Super Spreader Jet."
Oh, my favorite kind of jet.
They've lost me at the end.
This is a New York Post article.
Makes sense.
It seems to be implying that because the handful of Texas Democrats who fled the State House of Texas in order to basically filibuster by being not present, that they're claiming that they're hypocrites because they didn't wear masks on the private jet they were taking to leave.
But I don't understand. They're not all like sisters and brothers. Like, did they all take the same jet?
Yeah, probably.
What are they talking about?
But they're also like all vaccinated, so like they're like the only vaccinated people in that state house.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
like
this gets into one of those weird areas of our stupid electoral politics system where just the filibuster in principle, staging a walkout and essentially preventing a quorum from being there to have votes is equivalent to a filibuster. And so it's an interesting tactic because in one way, obviously the right perspective is the conservative perspective is that this is a dereliction of duty. Although they did this right when the Texas winter storm thing happened.
They did
this is literally what Ted Cruz did.
Complete hypocrisy.
At the same time, this is just like what's happened today or in the last day, where the Senate is adjourned and they forgot to continue the moratorium on evictions. Because all these states
forgot
go
about
vacationing.
Yeah, they made a big oopsie.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi was like, maybe I'll do it, but then I won't. Oops.
Right, like I'm genuinely not sure if the Democrats who tried to flee from Texas to prevent this vote did it for the right reason of protest, or because they needed to get their vacation day in. Like you don't, we can't know.
Yeah. Or because they're like, I don't actually care about voting rights. I just want to keep getting elected, right? Because like the obvious thing is if they lose control of voting regulations in that state, it mostly affects them because the Republicans are trying to
exactly. There's a pure self-interest motivation.
Right. I
don't want to strip these people's rights who vote for me.
It's not fucking Martin Luther King. Like they're not doing like a selfless thing that's likely to harm them. This is just like how to keep my 401k. Like it's not even like that elaborate.
Can I do the
they totally lost me with the super spreader jet.
Because their claim is that the Democrats are super spreaders, like that they're super spreading COVID all around the country. It's like, bitch, it's 2021. It's everywhere.
Yeah, they're saying that, you can't demand other people be more careful and empathetic because you probably spread COVID on a plane.
Right. It's another one of these permission articles. Hey, conservatives, you have permission to continue being an asshole because look, Dems do it.
It's the whiny Republican version of it. It's like, why can't I go into White Castle and cough into the server's throat if the Democrats get to ride in a jet? It's like, wait. Like these are like completely unrelated concepts, but apparently it's if the Democrats ever do something hypocritical as like the center right of the two corporate parties, then everyone else should suffer my horrible COVID views too.
Yeah,
it's completely insane.
It's the same shit as like AOC doesn't live in abject squalor, Bernie Sanders doesn't live in abject squalor. So
exactly.
How can they attack anyone ever?
It's just that we live in a society shit. Like it's
right, exactly.
But you also live in this society. You know, the interesting thing in these three articles is that it's very easy to see how in the modern day America, politics is so divorced from fighting for material interests and quality of life. It's just permission to yell at people you don't like. This is literally worse than sports rivalries. Sports rivalries, there's some camaraderie. They all engage in the same sport. There's real, genuine competition and meritocracy. This is just totally divorced from what the principal concept of politics is. And it's devastating because, like, how do you come back from this? How do you actually rebuild a coalition and really do electoral politics if the only thing we see, the only thing we have reflected back to us as citizens of this country is, you have permission to shit on this dude. Oh, you should be mad because that guy's a hypocrite. Oh, shouldn't you go kill that guy? It's all just vitriol. There's no possibility of coalition or coordinating or any building around any other unifying identity other than be a player hater.
Well, yeah, and it all plays as often a purposeful smokescreen because even if that's all vapid and meaningless, like the mechanics of our current government, our current system of capitalism are still grinding on in the background. So it's just another.
Yeah, no one's turning off the meat grinder.
Means to redirect outrage in useless directions. Yeah.
Well, that's the irony. Is like, so there's all this bullshit about like, oh, partisanship is at an all-time high. We're bowling alone. Nobody likes each other anymore. It's like you want to kill your chud uncle. Well, here's the thing. The politicians have never been more unified on the most important issues of our time, like economics, imperialism, how to treat immigrants, how to treat foreign countries. Like every single thing is basically now unified across the sort of Biden-Trump divide, other than like your image, other than the culture shit. So it's like the closer the two parties get to just returning to being a Democratic Republican party, like it's in 19th century.
Like it's
the more exactly. Like the more the culture war shit has to go insane to keep us thinking there's a reason that we're different. Like Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to do the moratorium any more than the Republicans do. So we have to yell about culture shit because we have two different kinds of Republicans running the country.
No, she actually claims she wasn't aware.
Yeah, she wasn't aware.
But this begs a question, which is if the people in charge push the culture stuff for longer and longer, will we actually make that the reality that overturns politics is purely culture? Because they think, everything's third rail. The economy, industrialization, automation, imperialism, all that stuff is just locked in. That's unchangeable. That's unfixable. So if the only arena left to fight is culture, what if that ends up actually becoming the real future arena of who dictates who has power?
Well, that's what Trump is. That's what Trump is. He's just a reality TV show.
Like, imagine what... Like when the literal orcs are taking over versus the resistance libs are taking over and actually fighting about those things, and that leads to tangible differences, different outcomes.
I mean, Trump is literally the reality TV candidate. There's a reason he was popular, because he's the embodiment of dumb culture war bullshit, because he has no substance. He didn't even know what he was doing. He didn't know how to do the job. But
right, and every time he suggested anything not, Republican, dinner plate,
Yeah,
It was immediately shot down by all his helpers and generals and
but like
other people.
his popularity is not because of any kind of identity or he doesn't have an ideology that was coherent. It was because he was the most culture war dipshit of anyone. Because
He just owned the libs the hardest.
Fox News, and he owned the libs, and he said stupid shit. And it's like he's the troll in chief, and that's what we've become. Because he would dunk on people in the way they wanted.
There's this weird cannibalism of it, though. Because not only did he own the libs, he owned the Republicans.
Right.
And
right.
they loved that shit. They
he made them all look like assholes. Like he made Marco Rubio seem like a stuttering dipshit. It's like that's what they wanted because they hate everyone just like we hate everyone. Like both sides of the country hate both parties very intensely. Because they're both terrible and it's all kind of obvious. Like we just want someone to go in there and be like, hey, you guys suck. You can't even defeat me and I'm a fat geriatric asshole, which is basically the picture of both of them.
How stupid are the leaders in the parties then if they can't immediately weaponize that for their own self-interest? Are they blind?
I mean, they're
trying. I was listening to some like I don't know if it's BBC, but some like British political commentary radio channel, and this guy was just owning Trump voters and Trump supporters, obviously, because they're mostly people in the UK who were calling in and be like, I like Trump because he tells it how it is. It's like, what do you mean? Does he give any actual policy? I don't know. It's like they just like that someone's called out the politicians, but theoretically, can't anyone do that? Like it's such a low bar to give this red meat of I'm owning the libs. Like why aren't other Republicans jumping on that? Do they just not have the BDE? They just not have the charisma stat to do it?
I mean, like I guess establishment ones, so to speak, aren't. But I think like the Matt Gaetzes and the Marjorie Taylor Greens are certainly running that way.
Yeah, but they're gonna both be like dead in 5 years. They are train wrecks of humans.
Allegedly, but yeah, the sort of all-consuming need to dunk on the existing status quo because of how bad it is replacing the need to actually change the status quo. It's just you make fun of it and then you move on.
Yeah, because it's so much harder to change anything.
So Trump going in there and being like, "You're pussies," it's like, okay, but you didn't. You had 4 years and you changed nothing in a positive direction in government.
But look how quickly this changed, though. Because I was politically aware when Ted Cruz ran as a Tea Party candidate. He ran as an owned libs candidate. And in, I don't know, 2 political cycles, 2 presidential cycles, he's now an establishment Republican.
Not only that, he's like the Save Our Party Republican.
Right, he's like the preeminent establishment Republican.
I think you'll find that I'm a normal establishment Republican and I can stop the Trump. And of course he couldn't. But it's almost like as soon as he becomes shuffled into being like the heel role, like as soon as he has to play establishment, he can't win anymore.
Right, he just fell into that role and just
all the energy was with fuck these guys, and as soon as you're the more establishment than the most insane fuck these guys candidate, you're out. You're done. Because that's where the energy is. It's just anti-establishment energy because the establishment sucks. It's like, well, they've been preaching that it sucked for an enormous amount of time.
All right, I'm getting hyphy. Do we have any final article headline?
Final? We're not even halfway through.
This is not even my final form.
I don't even know if this one's Republican, but I suspect it is. This one is one of the leaders of the Arizona audit says cyber ninjas might be cooking the books.
Now, this one I have to agree with.
Yeah, this is a Slate article.
It just makes me think of the assassination missions in Shogun Total War.
Yeah.
Like with the fucking he's coming in with the wheelbarrow, and instead of like poison darts, he just has like hackers. Oh my god, cyber ninjas!
Yeah, this is
literally from like the Cyberpunk 2077 press release. What is this shit?
Yeah, this is the first DLC.
Yeah, this is so much.
The first DLC is an election fraud.
It's so much cooler than what we actually have. Like if ninjas were fucking with like the Republicans in Arizona or whatever, that would be great. Like almost everything they say is wish fulfillment.
They fucked up the verbiage so bad. They go from cyber ninjas to cooking the books.
It's a pretty mixed metaphor there.
Yeah. Like, head cow grazes and the cream of the crop rises.
Cyber ninja chefs. Yeah.
Just written by Bonesaw.
The shinobi's wearing like the green visor and like sitting there with an abacus. Like I don't know.
I swear to God, Jesse Ventura would laugh this off.
This just reminds me of like once again in Arizona when when all these people were hunting for bamboo laced China ballots in the recount. They're like holding them up and sniffing and weighing them and like testing their flammability. Yeah.
Now see, we bought a panda, and he's gonna be our key auditor to figure out if he eats the ballot. There was bamboo in it. We know it was a China vote.
We know that Kung Fu Panda skewed the vote.
Oh no, Kung Fu Panda was the cyber ninja.
It's all coming together.
It's Hollywood.
We've cracked the code.
Oh, God.
Holy shit! Yeah, Arizona's an absolute fucking death spiral of a state.
Alex, what publication does that come from?
That one's from Slate too.
Oh boy.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I actually stuck mostly to like fairly mainstream sources. Like you would not believe the stuff that gets through the mainstream. This one was actually especially dark, and I don't think it was meant to be this dark, but it was very funny. And I was going to save this one for Mikey, but we'll tell about it later. The next article headline is Californians are arriving in Montana in droves, but they're not welcome. Now, this describes what to me is like the beginning of a movie plot where there's literally like bleeding Kansas, like violence in the streets as like Californians try to like escape the wildfires or something, and they enter like different wildfires in Montana, and they're just like brutally slaughtering each other for like the last living cow in Montana that can provide milk or something. I don't know.
It's probably the case. I mean, we haven't read the article, so we don't know it's not.
Yeah. But it's so sinister.
Yeah. It just sounds like this was written by someone from Montana as a veiled threat.
Right.
Yeah, I am speechless.
Yeah, is this headline written in like cut out and pasted magazine letters?
it's in ransom note letters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is written by a guy who has not yet figured out how to listen to the Joe Rogan Experience, because everyone has witnessed Californian elites move from California to Austin and be like, "Oh, everything's so much better in Texas." You know, I'm on my honeymoon of moving in here before the state falls apart on top of me. So people are like, "All right, well, what's close enough?" Montana, like, oh god, this idea that California is somehow this hotbed of socialism at work is such a travesty. California is like the 8th biggest economy in the fucking world.
It's bigger than the vast majority of countries. Yeah.
The idea that conservatives can flee, or not even just conservatives, but like, you know, I'm normal, I'm moderate, I'm average, can flee California to the Dust Bowl and somehow carve out a better life for themselves is a joke.
What's even weirder is this came from San Francisco Gate. This was like a California article. This wasn't even like a Montanan article.
Yeah.
Which is even weirder. It's almost
is it more just hate permission? Is it just like the first articles where the Californian
is it like we're not being treated well in Montana? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it's preempting getting hate in Montana.
Yeah,
I could see it like
all the fleeing Californians have barcodes and stars on them. Like, what the fuck?
I could see it being like a victimhood article. Like, we're being persecuted for our vaccine cards.
We're being persecuted for our median income of $250,000.
You know, every other article now is if it's not explicitly COVID, it's like economic anxiety. Everything's wrong with the economy, and here's how you can somehow not be affected. Or for the really dark, black pill, it's like, here's how you're always going to be affected. Get fucked. The next one is people are just walking out in the middle of shifts. What it's like to work in a restaurant.
Yeah, I saw this actually. Yeah,
which I don't even know what to say about the fact that the framing of that headline places the burden of sadness and difficulty on the people who are either still employed or employing them instead of the people who are now unemployed.
Let's ask this franchise owner what his thoughts are.
Like, instead of the people who are like one bad day away from like a active shooting event.
This is literally the Killing Joke.
Yeah.
This is the Killing Joke from the perspective of like the franchise owner that fired the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it's really stressful to be a business owner right now.
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah, it's like this man.
I've ran out of my COVID relief money.
Man,
that I got from the government for zero interest payback.
Yeah, exactly. With a small loan of $500,000 from his parents, franchise, 3 Applebee's.
Yeah.
And now we're
Alex,
sad to report one of his customers missed out on mozzarella sticks.
I was reading a couple articles like this that were all in our local paper because some local restaurant went out of business. So who does the paper go to? The fucking chud who runs it.
Oh yeah,
Like,
that was actually
I can't believe
horrible.
I even raised the wages and no one wanted to apply.
He literally wrote a screed. He wrote a screed.
Right. He didn't get the response he wanted from the neutral article. So then he wrote his editor's opinion that he submitted to the newspaper to run.
It was literally like, thanks socialists for allowing people to get unemployment relief. Now they don't have to work at my slave restaurant. It's like,
which is expiring in September, by the way.
Insane. The degree to which it's gone from let me make sure that I'm a competitive participant in the economy because capitalism is good and competition is good, to if anything ever goes wrong for me, the owner, then capitalism is bad and also socialism is bad. The only thing that's good is when I get free money and my workers have to work for free. Like there's not even like a consistent ideology. It's just like, this is bad for me, so it's socialism or it's something stupid. I don't know.
Here's the tragedy, because let's say this person's not as evil as we suspect. The tragedy is they've been sold a false bill of goods. These people have been told and instilled in them and taught that capitalism rewards owners. So their expectations, look, I've achieved franchise. I've achieved ownership. I run a small business. I'm supposed to be succeeding. I'm not supposed to be bleeding. And so he's dismayed because he's like, I thought I won the game. Now you're telling me I've also lost? And they can't realize that capitalism did this to them. Not the other ideology that they think is bad.
It's their right as an American to run a Denny's.
Right.
Even though I might have more sympathy for workers in general, it doesn't mean I don't have sympathy for small business owners too. As you say, like they've grown up in a norm that's they don't really understand the ramifications and backing of. It's just like, once again, a sad reality. They don't even realize that like they are well below many other people who actually...
They don't actually have levers of serious power.
Yeah,
they could just
exactly.
misrate 10 people instead of thousands.
Yeah.
They're 2 rungs up in the pyramid scheme. And they're going, how could this be a pyramid scheme? And this is impossible that this doesn't work.
Exactly. They've sold their first batch of essential oil.
Right.
And the return wasn't as good as they thought. Like, wait, what the fuck? I thought I got the timeshare, though.
The economy is no longer so strong that people moderately high up the pyramid scheme are doing well. It's just
the
not
grifters can just coast.
Right. And they're like, but I thought I was set. Yeah, it's really incredible. But again, the framing that they are the people we should feel sad for primarily, as opposed to the people who are now getting evicted, going into bread lines, can't feed their children reliably, don't have power in their homes.
Yeah, like the literal bread lines in Texas.
Like the fact that poverty and crime is rising because people are desperate. And then there's someone who's like, well, now I'll have to, work until I'm 60 instead of 55 because, my restaurant. It's like, I don't know. The centering of the report is incredible.
But who's showing them otherwise?
Yeah.
Who's showing them otherwise? All these people watch 2008 happen. All these people watch the biggest financial instruments and industries in this country get totally bailed out. They watch all these failing car companies get bailed out. They watch all these industries just get like, oh, no big deal, no harm, no foul. What else? What other message are people with money and resources supposed to take other than everyone's too big to fail who has money?
Yeah.
The funny thing is that like a lot of them probably suffered enormously during those periods.
Right,
too.
they lived through that.
The fact that they could be disenfranchised from seeing people much more capable than them of suffering no repercussions personally, financially, even with the horrible outcome of their decisions. We're talking about investment firms and such. Yeah, how can you look at that and be like, just gotta put my head down, it's gonna get better. The system works.
But on the other side of the coin, these people are bad because what are they really doing with this article? They're just shitting on black and brown people who make up basically every single worker in a restaurant. So
how dare
it's really just a way to move their anger and hatred and ire and blame towards people who don't look like them. Fundamentally, we all kind of know that's really what's going on here.
The authors of this article, that's an entirely different case. I don't have any sympathy for them.
Well, yeah, this article could have been written in 1866 and been black sharecroppers who are former slaves are just walking off of cotton fields. what it's like to work at a plantation right now. It's like
the desolation.
They're just angry that their basically coerced slave labor has any option other than being coerced. It's like, oh, some of them are willing to have comparative poverty and taking unemployment rather than being like a $7 an hour laborer at like the grease factory. Like, is that something we should be upset about? I don't know. But again, all these articles, they all center the wealthiest and most powerful person in these exchanges.
Because that's who writes articles.
They do not center the people who are actually vulnerable. They do not center the people who are actually like the closest to extreme poverty. No, it's the people who were upper class or upper middle class and now they're middle class. How could this have happened?
This makes me think that I have like a brain disease because clearly these articles are just written for themselves.
Yeah.
So if no one who that like we're actually trying to advocate for on behalf of are reading these articles, why are we reading these articles?
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that this is just its own little weird, perverse cottage industry of pissing off people like us who actually could understand that these are bad.
This is a CNN article. Like, this is down the middle America. Like, they're not even. This isn't published in like it's not published in the New Yorker. Like, it's not published in a magazine that's like we are for the elite. It's just like normal news where everyone thinks they're upper class, even as we fall into poverty. Well, actually, it is, yeah. But like, there are certain magazines that are like, this is for a certain gentry, in like intellectual or economic or educational class.
Yeah,
I don't think CNN is usually that. They're not usually saying like this is just for people with graduate degrees. So the fact that they're always centering the elite is more of an ideological fetish, I think, than any sort of like their actual demos that they're targeting to. I don't know. But speaking of CNN, they had another clunker.
Excellent segue.
Not quite as insane, except what it doesn't say. This article is called "Biden Administration to Resume Fast-Track Deportation Procedure for Migrant Families."
At least we're doing something on time.
Ooh, speed run! I'm sensing the new speed run record.
So this is a really great way of saying
fast track.
Biden resumes fascistic immigration policies made popular by Donald Trump and Obama. Like, they don't even make any effort at continuity or acknowledging that this is the exact thing he was elected to stop.
Alex, we've hit bedrock. There no analysis needed. We don't need to read the article. Everyone gets the message.
Everyone knows what it is. But this
is just missing some color commentary. Otherwise, it just says what it says, and what it says is exactly what you just said out loud.
We're missing a Biden quote.
Right? It's just so incredible. It's just so incredible to me that this thing, like, we spent 4 years going insane because Trump was doing shit like this, and when Biden does it, it's like, oh, he got an easy pass on that. Slap it right on there.
Look how successful he is. Look at this. Look at his agenda setting.
Get him out of here! But it's like fine now because he's got a D next to his name. Like, this is why partisanship is totally pointless. Like, getting excited about the blue team. This is what we get.
There's been some significant consternation. You know, people have been clenching their butt cheeks about how to feel about Biden redoing this. Like, I've seen libs' brains, tearing apart on screen, trying to rationalize this to themselves because they really can't. And so there's at least been gnashing of teeth, which is more than I can say about virtually any of these other topics we've covered.
Yeah. I'm not saying that there's not opposition. Like, basically anyone with the slightest combination of heart and brain opposes doing this.
No, I don't mean opposition. I mean lib internal conflict.
Yeah, well,
I've seen genuine cognitive dissonance amongst people who are talking about this stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm sure when they were sending the first wave of people with disabilities to the camps in Germany, there were some people who were like, I do not know.
I'm feeling conflicted.
Yeah, sure, but they didn't stop. And I don't see this stopping either anytime soon. If we basically are like, well, we elected the better guy and he's doing it just as much, that pretty much tells you where the Overton window is shifted in mainstream political options.
Yeah, I mean, this is no mystery to people who are going to be listening to this, that what Democrats say today, Republicans said 10 years ago, and the same pattern has tracked for the last 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
We just keep careening right, and there's no corrective measures that get to survive or actually work. They immediately get, bulldozed immediately, or they get at the last, at the 11th hour, get called in by Obama. They get drone struck by Obama.
Yeah, I kind of struggle to put myself in the mind of those libs that you're talking about who feel that cognitive dissonance, feel that dissonance in general, and then kind of just build a new compartment and move on. Like, how do you square the fact that this is objectively terrible and something that you were probably frothing at the mouth about on Twitter for 4 years during Trump's presidency, and then just like kind of look at this and close your eyes for a couple minutes and go on with your life? And
you voluntarily relinquish object permanence. You just move on. You just go, hey, next story. What are we covering next? All right, well, we gave him that one. We lost that game. New game. Next game.
Schrodinger's principles.
If these like hashtag resistance lives had like an internally consistent moral compass and an actual political ideology, then they would be writing like 1,000 articles that's like how Biden betrayed us, the horrific fascistic turn of the supposed Democrat.
These are all the articles written by labor people when Blair, went into Iraq. Like those articles are written. All those people have been excised from their parties. All the look, to their credit, all the Republicans who were like, no go on Trump since the get-go and who didn't then hop on the gravy train have left the Republican Party. The sorting has occurred. The people who were lifelong Democrats who are unhappy with, basically how things have gone since the year 2000 have left the party. And the same is true on the right.
That's what's incredible, because people are like, well, why is the younger generation so left-wing these days? It's like the bar to be a Democrat or Republican has become so right-wing that if you were like a centrist of yesteryear, you're now a Bernie bro. Like, you literally can't be a mainstream Republican or Democrat without endorsing so many, like, war crimes and horrific economic arrangements that are, like, brutalizing the poor, that basically they've forced you to pick between being a Republican and being a radical Marxist. Like, because those are the only options in the American perspective. Like, to be a mainstream Democrat now means to say articles like this are fine. Like, to say, like, Biden good. Biden was blue. He was the one who was not Trump. He's good. And that's like... It's party allegiance kind of stuff where even though we basically get nothing from the party, we have to constantly signify that any moral abomination that they do is fine as long as it's our side.
This is why it's so much like sports. The Cowboys have not been a good football franchise for 20 years. They still call themselves America's team. The Yankees have been trash in the last decade. They still we're the Yanks though. And so in sports, you stick with your party, you stick with your team through thick and thin. When your team's shit, when your team's amazing, when your team's middling and trying to get to the playoffs. That's what's happened to politics. It's like, I'm going to stick with my party no matter what because they're my party. Because I was raised here. I love it here. I like that laundry. And it's like, but if you don't know any of the players, look, it's totally past what politics is actually about. What's your ideology? What party fits that? Vote along those interests. That's been totally obliterated. Totally obliterated.
Yeah, it's sectarianism. Really all it is.
Yeah, and it's not even masked because it's just like we need something to do, and having political efficacy is gone. So let's do sports. It's something to do. It obsesses our time.
It's just what's on TV. When sports is not on TV, because it's not Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This is what's on TV, and this is what people are watching.
But the most sinister aspect to me is that they can now use Biden and the Democratic Party to basically whitewash any atrocity, and they start slipping things under the radar that once again manipulative headlines. Here's another one: Biden sanctions Cuban regime after crackdown on protesters. Now, I'm not saying that you want to be brutalizing protesters when you're whatever country.
What country would do that?
But not only is this the most laughable case exactly of pot calling the kettle black after the last couple of years of
protesters cracked down on the protesters.
Yeah, how could you say something so?
Yeah, it's the Eric Andre meme.
We just need Spider-Man memes all the way down.
We have spent the last year and a half blowing black people's eyes out of their sockets with rubber bullets because they said stop murdering us. And that's been that's literally the history of the last year and a half.
Where's the Biden shoot him in the leg instead article?
Right.
Yeah, and that quote was amazing.
Right.
I got a genuine laugh out of it.
We're gonna tell people in other countries, look, protest's important. This is a big deal. But even that, we have been sanctioning Cuba for more than 60 years. Or what are we sanctioning now? Like stuffed animals, like toilet paper, what haven't we sanctioned at this point?
Isn't the great irony that Biden would really want those 1950s cars back? Because man, his dad could drive.
All right, that's actually the best take. Yeah, he really does want to get all those Cuban.
Now listen, guys. I'm going to end the sanctions. I want that Chevy back.
Yeah, we will lift the sanctions.
Man, that motherfucker
Give me back a 59.
Get me my Thunderbird. Nah.
Holy shit, man, that would actually be the dopest thing he would do.
But for like, instead of writing the article that's like, sanctions continue to crush the Cuban people and prevent them from getting access to life-saving medicine during a pandemic.
God, America's like the DJ Khaled of sanctions.
It's just like, Biden's doing sanctions, so now they're good, right?
Another one. Don't buy your mama a house. Another one.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
It's like the Chappelle skit where he's like, I'm shutting the studio down. It's like, you can only shut it down so many times and no one gives a shit anymore. Like, do you think if you're in Cuba and it's 60 years into an like almost total embargo on any trade with your country, and then some old dipshit comes up on the stage, he's like, I'm going to embargo you, I'm going to sanction you, they probably laugh. It's like, what? Like, what? What are you going to do that you haven't done? What's left to do? It's just so insane.
Yeah, it's like I'm going to starve Yemen. Oh, ships already left the port on that.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's just symbolic gestures because it's not like anything actually economically changed. Like it's the same. So the question is like, well, why are you giving this speech as opposed to why are you doing these sanctions? Because sanctions weren't going anywhere in the first place. So the question is like, why are you giving the speech? What is this getting him that he thinks he wouldn't get otherwise?
Yeah. Because like you're not going to see the article that would have been useful, which is like Biden sanctions police unions after destroying Black Lives Matter protests. Like he will never do this for the people who actually need it in his own country where he has authority to do it. It is purely a look. I'm doing the good lid thing of like protecting protesters in a foreign country that's not mine through military imperialism. Like it's a twisted way of making our imperialist project into the like lib reforms that we want at home.
Right, seem enlightened. Yeah,
it's so twisted.
Yeah, so you want so that you can pretend.
But like this is what national security guys say when they say protecting American interests and defending freedom. What they mean is cracking down on regimes when we deem they're violating freedom. This is textbook what we do. It's what we do. We've done for 100+ years.
Well, it's all I mean, it is that, but it's also even more calculated than that. It's keeping an eye out for when we can claim that countries that we have a vested interest in weakening could be viewed as violating human rights. It's not just kind of like stepping in as the good guy when we think we can for whatever image reasons or security reasons. It's like keeping a hawk eye out for selectively picking out the smallest flaws.
The next place to invade.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what it is, because it's like, what do we hear about in the news? We constantly hear about the official enemy countries that are the bad ones that do the bad things.
Yeah.
And then we'll cherry pick any data necessary so that it looks like the crimes or misbehavior that they're doing, which they usually are doing to some degree, are unique and unusual as opposed to enormously normal and common all across the world.
And it's literally what we do on a daily
basis. Here, right. So it's like, did you know that there are people in jail in Cuba? It's like,
it's like when there's guys on your sports team taking steroids, and then you get mad at your opponent who has teammates who are right. Your opponent team has dudes taking steroids. Like, yeah, but I like my team, and it's okay if we take steroids. Yeah. But I'm mad when they cheat.
Yeah, because it's like it would be like the articles. America, world's largest imprisoner of humans, angry with Cuba for imprisoning humans while operating base on Cuba, imprisoning people without trial. It's just the levels of hypocrisy are so absurd that they almost can't be said. Like, you can't even really understand them, because it's like, well, that must not be insane, because it would be too glaring and too obvious. There must be something I don't understand.
When's the last time Guantanamo Bay had some headline coverage? Yeah. I feel like I haven't heard about Guantanamo since Obama.
Oh, there was one. It was literally a week or two ago. There was an article, I didn't even grab it, I probably should have, which was like, Biden releases first Guantanamo Bay prisoner of his term. Like 6 months into the term.
Noteworthy.
From a promise that his predecessor Obama said he'd shut down like 12 years ago. Fucking incredible.
All right. Do we have anything?
He's a hero of our time. I got two more.
Anything more positive to end on?
No. I got two more. These were both building out of... that was a political article. These are both building out of this like military empire, like imperial fetishism that basically uses sort of manipulative language to make it seem like everything has to do with our stated enemies. Here's a great one. This is a great way of punching left while also fucking with our stated enemies. How U.S. military pullback in Iraq could benefit Iran.
Ooh, 2 for 1.
Who wrote this? Is this George Will again?
Daily Double.
I don't even. This is a BBC article, which is really just like
Favorite nation status, baby.
we funded the war, the Iran-Iraq war, which killed out like 1 million Iranians and something like 300,000 Iraqis. And we supported Saddam Hussein all throughout that. And while he was using chemical weapons and like tear gas and like all sorts of crimes against Geneva Conventions and whatnot against the Iranian people. This is after we couped their democracy. This is after we did everything we did to Iran. And now we're like, I don't know, if we were doing fewer war crimes, might that help that old country that we previously victimized not be as victimized? I don't know, man.
Alex, I have a question. Did you read this article, or did this headline just trigger you so bad because of your knowledge of world
It's
history?
just so dumb. Like, it's.
Have you read this article though?
I've not read this article, but I've read many articles like
Okay,
this.
because I'm curious, because we might be just too negative. What if it's like some, Muslim Brotherhood like communist who's like, this is how we can revitalize the Middle East with America finally getting the fuck out? Like, who knows what the perspective is?
Don't think that this is like Tariq Ali writing in the BBC.
I don't know. Maybe this. What I'm saying is, maybe this one is supposed to leaves a little bit more room for interpretation. Because look, I've read many articles. Sometimes I get the gist wrong at the start. I just start with my fire and brimstone and fury, and maybe the article comes around at the end, and the author's not quite as evil as I thought. This one to me leaves a little bit of room for negotiation.
This is the Louis like positive racism, like how U.S. military pullback in Iraq could benefit Iran.
Yeah.
Like we have to read it in like a positive tone of voice.
Yeah,
like,
what if you read it with a high note at the end?
Yeah, we have to read it like this is like a lib optimism thing. Like maybe once we leave Iraq, Iran can really get their shit together. If we're not brutally slaughtering their people, who knows?
Maybe they'll learn from our failures.
We got these scrappy upstarts in Iran any day now. Maybe they'll recover. Good luck to those folks.
Upstart 4,000-year-old civilization.
It's like, I don't know. I almost want it to be that because that's much funnier and somehow dumber. Because that's like even more ignoring the history between Iran and the West. But
yeah, it'd be funny.
That would be great.
It would have to be like Here's how it would have to be written. It would be how U.S. military pullback in Iraq gives Iran a fresh start, a clean slate. Oh,
just
man.
Amazing. Yeah, I think we can end on
what's the last one?
The last article, which is once again, this is like the Daily Double. Like it has military empire fetishism, an official state enemy, shitting on the left, pushing insane conspiracy shit in the headline. It's really got it all. Behind the rise of U.S. solar power, a mountain of Chinese coal. Now,
yeah, this is the one I found.
Yeah, that's really. I mean, I
love this title.
I don't even know what to say to that.
I love this, and here's why. America in the last 10 years has become obsessed with tech. Yeah. We're obsessed with San Francisco. We're obsessed with Elon Musk. We're obsessed with Apple and Facebook and Instagram and all the tech industry that at this point is pretty much the outputter of all the culture we make. And all we make as a country is culture anyway. So because tech is our entire industry, our entire output as a country, like Kazakhstan #1 output of zinc, whatever the fuck Borat said. There has to be some way to chip away at this. Conservatives can't. It's not okay for a conservative to acknowledge and concede that all we put out as a country is tech shit, evil tech shit that California makes. So there has to be some sinister side to clean, to being green, to being tech, to being future progressive. And so this argument's been made by a lot of people and around a lot of other new technologies, not just solar power. I mean, the same exact argument is made about electric cars, that the electricity used in the creation and processing of the future clean tech is just as dirty as fossil fuels. So the argument of this article that I actually read a little bit of, because I couldn't read the whole thing because, paywalls and fuck Wall Street Journal, is that somehow China is the only producer of the silica, the polysilica, sheets needed to make solar panels. So China is getting away with with dirty coal that they can make cheap because we're not sanctioning them anymore, and not putting any climate restrictions on them currently because we opted out because we're idiots. So they're the only ones who are cheaply making our solar panels, and we're just buying it up from them, increasing our debt and their ownership of our debt. And that even though this will lead to future energy saving by making solar panels and windmills in America, it's currently just as negative and contributing to the climate crisis as, us blowing up mountains and extracting dinosaur DNA is doing. And it's this insane, we can't have new things because it's just as bad as the old thing. It's just a way to punch down and just shit on new stuff and say, well, it's not even worth doing because it's just going to be as bad as the current shit we're doing. We may as well stick with the current thing, which is, enriching me, by the way. So it's just run of the mill. It's just so.
But that's what's so laughable. It's like, when they test Kevlar vests, they have to shoot a lot of guns. You don't like guns, do you? It's like, what? You're talking about a measure that's specifically meant to defeat the polluting elements of our environment, and it's like we can't do that because there would briefly be polluting. And there's no mention of the fact that failing to do this guarantees an indefinite future of pollution. There's no logical counterpoint that's like, well, hey, if you're an environmentalist,
but not just pollution that enriches China,
right? But it's so incredible how they've got
our mortal foe.
Yeah, the entire American element. It's like we've got anti-Chinese xenophobic nationalism. We've got confused environmentalist liberals who think that wait, I don't want to help coal. We've got this sinister QAnon conspiracy shit that's every time the U.S. tries to do something, Chinese financiers are really behind it. Wait for the day when we'll know to pull out of. It's like it's just the Wall Street Journal is kind of like the sort of middle brow Fox. They say the insane reactionary conspiracy stuff, but they have to say it in a way that sounds like they've got a master's degree. And this is really how
Fox for the guy who's not the franchise owner, but the regional owner.
Yeah, it's really incredible. They're wordsmiths of stupid, but there it is.
But they got nothing on our boy from Chicago. Guy.
Oh, you're not. No, I'm not bringing that up. That one's
now I'm intrigued.
Yeah, he's talking about John Cass.
Oh, okay.
He's talking about John Cass.
Oh my God.
I haven't been commenting.
That's a wordsmith.
Because I read the whole article, so I evaded the paywall. But it's there's a little bit worth talking about in it.
That's actually interesting because you've read it. We have not. Are we accurate or what? You're the corrective measure here. What do you think?
It basically, as you just explained, in the culture educated, carefully composed prose of the Wall Street Journal. Basically, kind of injects the normal kind of xenophobic expectations, anti-East expectations that you would think, but adds enough kind of evidence and facts to make the average reader think that it's nothing more than a kind of harmless analysis of the production of solar power, as opposed to what it clearly is, as you say, a projection of a bunch of agitation without any real offering of alternatives or reasons that we can't continue to move forward and adjust. It doesn't mention at all that China has actively been trying to move away from coal for the past decade or so.
Right.
It's reduced its coal use by almost 10%.
And that it has these coal factories in totally desolate, low population areas as to minimize the harm on humans.
Or that America still produces more pollution per capita.
Yeah, exactly.
America's still a bigger polluter for its size than China is. And we still act like China's destroying the world. It's
China.
They're just a huge population.
We have
Mordor.
We have not shown nearly the amount of concern that China has with trying to shift towards clean energy.
Right. And somehow we're the heroes in this story. We're the lionized. The U.S. is always trying so hard to get green, but these dirty Chinese just keep dragging us back. It's
no, see, Alex, we're not the heroes. This is a scolding article. saying America, in our trying to be green, are being naive babies.
We're the
Get back in the mud. Get back in the dino mud.
We're the useful idiots trying to get green when this is just Xi Jinping's secret agenda to coal us up.
The author of this article may as well have just been Shell Corporation.
That would have been such a funnier conclusion for the article.
Yeah.
China's trying to cuck us into being cold.
Because like xenophobia is super hot right now. Like it's super cool to hate China. You could be like a Bernie bro and get sucked into fucking hating on China because right now everyone's like, oh, Hong Kong protests, communism,
last year.
Taiwan's winning the Olympics. It's all this horseshit.
No one's watching the Olympics.
We drag this crap out. We beat this dead horse. We've been beating it since like 49 about whether China is China or whether a small island off the coast of China is China. And we just can't stop. Like, we cannot help ourselves. Richard Nixon was more tolerant of the communist Chinese than modern average.
I was going to mention that earlier, that Richard Nixon would put our modern Democrats to shame.
It's embarrassing.
Like, it would be funny if all these coal plants were in Taiwan. That would be the kicker.
That would cause an aneurysm.
Well, according to them,
according to
them, Taiwan is China. So I guess.
No, they're not. These are all in like the northeast towards Mongolia, actually.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway,
we could always talk about more articles, but I think almost an hour of trying to parse some of the most manipulative and idiotic phrases written in English is about all we could do for one episode.
And we all learned a lesson.
Yeah, I think we've learned a lot about the world and the facts of the world, and nothing but the facts. Holy shit.
We're all better people for it. We all feel much saner.
This is America. Yeah. This song has no lyrics. I want to talk about Blizzard.
Let's do it. We're here. That doesn't require too much prep.
All right. So as anyone listening to this would know, we all game. Because who doesn't these days? Am I right, folks?
Well, I don't think they would know that, but they could very reasonably infer it.
They've read the headline of this podcast and they've inferred it.
Yeah.
All right, so, I mean, Alex, you have the most knowledge of this, not of the current story, but of Blizzard as a corporation, because when you were burgeoning into your youth and getting involved in video games and computer games, Blizzard was its original company and putting out some of its best work. And this is stuff that you really got interested in. You were the first person I watched play Warcraft, play StarCraft, play Diablo, and we spent hundreds and hundreds of hours playing that stuff, watching it together. You played strategy games with all your friends, and it's just shocking to me. Not that like the gaming community is as toxic as it is, and as male dominated as it is, and as sexually harassing as it is, but that the corporate aspect is so matching with the rest of American society. I mean, the people who make computers, the original Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, these were nerds. These were turbo nerds who were not getting into the finance programs and not going into the FBI and not going into the track of getting tenure as professors. These were not your established managerial class kinds of people. These were people who, only 30, 40 years earlier were saving us from ending World War II and then getting chemically castrated and killing themselves. Like Alan Turing.
I wouldn't put Gates on the level of Turing, but
they do.
Yeah.
They would do it for themselves. So my point is, the computer and digital people have always felt a little different than your establishment, like capitalists.
Sure.
And just to see how quickly that glimmering light flickered out. Google's like opening motto when they first invented were like, "Do no evil" or some shit. Do no evil shit. Apple's whole thing of like bringing aesthetic to tech. All of that shit went down the drain when it's like, wait, we can make how much money? And
I think they've simplified it to do not let any evil show up in your search results. That's the modern take.
Case of Blizzard is fascinating because the state of California is suing the company Blizzard for basically 2 decades of sexual harassment, violations of workplace rights, wrongful firings, I think some, traumatic events. I'm not sure if there's a wrongful death in there. There might have been 1 or 2 suicides that are referenced, but just some tiny portion of Blizzard's staff are women, and they are habitually abused worse than the fucking midgets are abused in Wolf of Wall Street. And it's so disgusting to read the facts on this article, this case. And the worst part is that you have to read it all from like Kotaku and Rock Paper Shotgun, all these trash websites. So it's this really horrible, harrowing story.
10 people who came here from there. See ya.
Yeah, fuck them. So it's horrible. Like there's literally there was a Bill Cosby room in Blizzard's headquarters, and I don't mean a room where like they raped women. I mean a room where there's literally photos of all the executives hanging out with Bill Cosby.
Oh, all right. That was not what I thought you were saying.
I mean, I'm pretty sure there was drugging and raping going on there too. But the point is, like, there's literally a literal Cosby room. Where they're like, yes, this is our moral icon.
It should be mentioned that we are reporting on the news of this. We do not actually have any personal knowledge of this. This is all alleged.
I don't care. I was there. Whatever.
Yeah, so, but yeah, that's to be honest with you, none of that's particularly surprising me because this is basically every corporate structure. Like, when you have total power over other people because they're completely financially dependent on you, and like even if they didn't have that requirement, it's like their healthcare comes from the employment, their day to day, like half of them are living paycheck to paycheck, like because of the incredible precarity that any worker in this country who is not like incredibly sought after set of skills or something, that pretty much all of the non-essential workers, they could be let go at any time. Like they could be destroyed. And in fact, in the games industry, it's notorious for ripping off and abusing its workers and basically making them work for months and months with little or no pay and say, "Oh, you'll get it later."
Crunch, the grind, the deadlines.
Yeah.
But there's an extra stank on it, and the extra stank is just the level of misogyny in gaming seems to even supersede like Mad Men shit. It is so bad, the stories that have come out from this.
Yeah,
it is horrendous.
I think that even that's kind of like a distortion, though, because I think that the gaming element is actually secondary. Because this is true in like if you dig into any serious industry where the proportion of men is that high, women get abused and assaulted and victimized. Like it's literally just of the Wild West. If you have too many men in an environment where they have power over women, this is what you get.
Yeah, I'm just saying this: that basically since the 90s. The gaming industry is one of the few industries remaining where women have not started to outpace men basically due to college education rates.
Right, I haven't started to
so the gaming industry in particular, which I'm a part of through and through, is even more insular because it's seen as like a protected male space in a lot of ways. And maybe not at the at the end user level, although it still is to some degree, but I mean at the corporate level, it's like a male protected space. And I don't know, the abuse, there's a clip going around that's resurfaced from BlizzCon 2010 where this woman who was like a grad student who played all the, all their games was like, I love World of Warcraft. Could the new female characters have a little bit less like thong armor? And the 3 head developers of the game, one of which who's been fired for sexual harassment this year, were like, suck a dick, we'll get it from a different catalog. We'll keep doing it. Like they just laughed at her, and like all the men in the audience were like, boo, you suck. It's so bad. And it's embarrassing because not only is Blizzard as a corporation embarrassing, and are their recent products embarrassing, it's just embarrassing on behalf of all people who love the internet, love gaming, love this industry, love the camaraderie and friendship you get out of it, and just are totally antithetical to the horrible message that Blizzard has put out for more than a decade. And that's the new rule.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, unlike a lot of other...
Blizzard is the motherlode of bad ideas.
Unlike... I won't disagree with that. Unlike a lot of other sectors, like, game development and publishing is strangely, like, interlinked with the community of consumers who consume their products. Because, like, you don't see, like, an investment firm, like, keeping a bunch of posting boards or social media accounts open that like day-to-day interact with all of the people who use them to invest in stocks.
They don't have game testers on retention.
Right. So I feel like almost there's a bit more of a feedback loop in game development and game publishing of, as you say, like that toxic element, which you have to admit exists very prevalently, at least online, in those who consume.
Man, I've been playing Battlefield 4 a lot lately. Holy shit, the toxicity never went away.
Years later, and that's
the game's been out almost 8 years.
Yeah.
People still shit talking.
Yeah, but why would they ever stop? Like they didn't like go to college.
You're like Dr. Malcolm. No one ever stopped to ask.
What I'm saying is, like, a lot of times we kind of default to this mode that's like, as time goes on, things get better.
It's 20XX. Aren't we better by now?
Well,
But it's
no,
like, look at the world.
I thought they might get tired at least.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of them died of kidney disease or whatever, but like a new generation joins. Like,
Failure.
yeah, because like half of them are like PTSDing vets who just like hate everything, and the other half are like teenagers who also hate everything for different reasons. Like the disproportionate audiences of these things are disaffected men. So the fact that they would then act out is completely unsurprising. But it's like, but they should kind of be able to act out as long as it's not affecting other people.
Right.
The whole point of games is to get your fucking stress out.
Yeah, it's like that case of the there's a very famous case of a Vietnam vet who came back from Vietnam, obviously shell-shocked and traumatized and PTSD, and he couldn't work he couldn't get a normal job, so he was given, some kind of compensation or some disability thing, and that eventually ran out, and he wasn't very stable, and his family tried to, like, appeal to the local VA or the government to get help, and they refused, and so one day he, like, bought a gun, and he was just driving down the road real fast, and a cop pulls him over, and the veteran just goes into soldier mode and like murks the cop.
Yeah, that's a
with
really
an M1.
It's a famous case, and
it's a very famous case. And it's all about how there were like 10 opportunities before this to stop the bleeding, to cut it off early, to solve the problem earlier. And it's just this constant procrastination of letting people decay, letting things get worse, and let them live in their fantasy worlds. And in the end, it led to this massive act-out incident that could have been avoided so many times.
Even lest we seem like we're apologizing for a particular nutcase murdering someone, like this is the kind of origin story of a lot of horrific violence in this country.
Right, so we're all like the school shooters.
We could have saved not only a ton of lives, but also billions and trillions of dollars in like the costs of prisons and the costs of trials and the costs of all these things. If we just like educated people, fed people, housed people, like when people have the basics, they tend not to become active shooters.
Giving people gaming PCs.
It's usually people who are extremely desperate or extremely psychologically damaged by the environment they live in.
If I'm running for president, I'm not giving Obama phones. Everyone's getting a 3090. That's my policy.
Yeah. Well,
you get a 3090. You get 128 gigs of RAM. You get a computer for the next 20 years.
By the time you run, it's going to be shit tech, though, so I think it's not...
Yeah,
I don't know.
Bernie Sanders is like fight for 15, except it's in like 40 years when they finally give it to us.
I saw some bullshit article that was like, oh, they're working on the new RTX 4000 series. I was like, you motherfuckers!
I can't even buy a 3090.
You just spent the last year shitting down everyone's throats and they couldn't get the new cards because China, apparently, because that's what we're supposed to...
Behind every gaming PC, a mountain of Chinese cards.
Exactly. That's actually just as true. That's where all the same tech comes. That's where all the same material silica comes from. Oh, man, that article is great. That needs to be written in Wall Street Journal cross Kotaku.
After every delicious restaurant meal, a mountain of poop. It's just like, all right, cool. Like, it's just who cares? It's not doing anything. But to briefly return to the Blizzard thing, this should not be surprising, right? Because like we literally just went through Me Too and like the bazillion revelations there, which is probably not even 1/100th of the iceberg as it is. We've gone through how many, the Catholic Church's rape scandal, every institution. It turns out,
and now they come for the nerds,
right? The Epstein Island. Like, how many of these do we have to get before it's like turns out everyone's raping, everyone's been abusing and like torturing each other as soon as the doors closed.
Well, I do have a question about the Blizzard situation. Do you guys think that, like, at the top level, I mean, plenty of people must have known about what was going on within the culture. How many people were being...
Yeah, they were the ones pushing it. It was literally, like, 3 of the execs were the ones doing the sexual harassment.
Do you think, like, at the very top, that it was just permissive, or, like, what you were describing, Jason, earlier, of, like, supposing that it's, like, there's also an element of this toxic infection based upon the culture?
It was encouraged. It's actually the same at all these tech firms. Uber, I can't recall off the top of my head, but there's like 4 other, startup businesses in the last 10 years that like their CEO got Me Too. Like every single tech dipshit who suddenly has $1 billion net worth company is like, time to rape. I guess I gotta get it on. Like I have all this power now, and I can just use it over other people. I can hire and fire at a whim. I can promote and demote at a whim. I can throw parties at a whim, and they just use this to immediately do what the base instinct of any man is. Fuck. It's really that simple.
Wow. It's one of these cases where the kind of people who pursue the relentless pursuit of power, who pursue the excessive and needless mass
predisposition to do that kind of shit
capital.
anyway.
Yeah, there's a certain kind of sociopathic monster who loves being a CEO.
Like, who could have predicted that these cops are going to shoot people? I mean, that's who they're trying to hire.
The kind of positions that give you power to dominate and abuse people attract dominators and abusers. So we shouldn't be surprised if there's like a disproportionate number of people who are doing evil shit in positions that are their primary perk is doing evil. So it really, like, I don't know, like that's just not that surprising to me. And I don't know that it's necessarily an indictment of all men. I think the vast majority of men are never going to rape anyone, sexually assault anyone. However, if you do want to do that kind of thing, you better make sure they don't have the power to report you to the police. You better make sure they don't have the power to actually fight you in court. You better make sure that they're completely dependent on you financially, which is why, like domestic abuse is so common. Like it's in situations where basically there's no consequence because they have all the cards in the situation. And this is why it's fundamentally like a form of like really cowardly abuse, because the vast majority of these cases are people who know there's no real resistance here. Like there's no risk. It's just preying on the vulnerable. It's shooting fish in the barrel. And that's why it's especially sickening, because this is not even like, oh, there was like, it was they had some power over me, I had some power over them, there was like a struggle. No, it was just fucking, they're just abusing helpless people, which is like what America celebrates. I don't know. But that's like the capitalist ethos, is get powerful enough so that you can do whatever you want and people become subservient to you. And now you've made it. That means you've made it. I don't know. Too dark?
No, I mean, less dark than reading any news article about the situation, honestly.
Yeah.
I totally agree, though.
Yeah.
It's like Swearingen and Deadwood. It's like we were talking about when we watched Predators. Like they're just doing this for sport. This is what their ethic is. This is what they get out of their society. These are the outputs you get when those are the inputs you put in.
Well, I think on that note, that's going to do it for us for our trial run podcast.
Inaugural first, maybe last episode.
Thank you for joining us, possibly, if this is ever released, in whatever order we release it.
If we're not in jail.
Yeah, and you probably already have heard other stuff from us, unless we've given up. So, thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on Non-Essential Workers Podcast.
God be with you.
See you.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential workers podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.